Welcome to the Blueprint. Today we are jumping right into what you really want to talk about when it comes to relationships, intimacy and sex. What better way to kick off this podcast than with the sex expert, Sophie Slade? Sophie is an award-winning Imago relationship therapist, author, and instructor who teaches therapists all over the world. She swears by Imago therapy because she says it saved her relationship from the brink of disaster. Her book, Satisfying Sex for Committed Couples, is for anyone who wants to juice up their intimate relationship. Do you want more intimacy in your relationship? Are you confused about why you don't want sex or why your partner has lost interest? Do you and your partner have different levels of libido? Are kids, age, work, technology, or other distractions impacting your connection? Join me in listening to Sophie's brilliance as well as her humor as she helps us understand the blueprint for satisfying sex and intimacy.
So without any further ado, Sophie, let's get into it.
Hey, thank you, Coco.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to see you today. Honestly, I always am happy to see you. You make me smile.
Thank you. Sex should do that.
Sex.
Topic of sex should do that. It often doesn't, but it would be nice if it did.
Is that why you're always smiling, Sophie?
Could be, could be.
Could be. I'm drinking a passion fruit cocktail in your on your honor today. It's actually pretty good. Okay. So thank you for joining us and helping us learn more about sex and relationships. I have so many questions. I'm not really sure where to begin, but I did write a few down. So many people talk about writing a book, but you did it.
Mm-hmm.
What was your impulse to write a book about sex and committed couples?
The impulse came from years of misery, actually. David and I, we've been lovers now for 50 years, but there were many years when it was very painful. We're very different around our sexuality. For many years, sex was, well, a way for David to feel connected. He had a much higher level of desire than I did. That was the one area where he could not suppress his needs as he did in many other areas. And it was an area where I had detached from my own aliveness. And it was very, very painful. And even after we started it, we attended the Getting the Love You Want workshop, and I started to train as an Imago therapist. It was really a core issue in our power struggle. And the dialogue, I think the dialogue process that we did when we started to talk about it, it helped us a little bit, maybe. Helped us to have a little bit more understanding and empathy for each other, I think. But it never got us turned on. It never got us, erotically connected with each other, talking about how unhappy we were, how inadequate we felt, all the pain and misery we were going through. We understood each other a bit better, I think, but it wasn't an erotic arousal
Experience.
So we never ripped each other's clothes off and jumped into bed as a result of those dialogues. So,
I get it.
having been through that, those many years of it being really quite painful between us, both of us suffering, and then going on a journey of discovering our sexuality in some totally different ways. I wanted other couples to have the possibility of finding a way out of the sexual power struggle that so many couples get caught up in and don't know how to talk about in ways that lead them to a better place.
So really, Sophie, your own pain and 50 years of being in a committed relationship with David. Wow, I wasn't aware that you've been together that long, and I wasn't aware that you had that struggle. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I do think it's a human experience, and I'm really excited about your book being able to help many of us explore that part of our marriage. It's so hard to talk about.
Mm.
So hard to talk about.
I will say the book hasn't been published yet.
Not
I've
yet.
submitted it to several publishers, so I'm waiting to hear back. I've got one positive response, and I'm hoping to get others. So hopefully within the year it'll be out there.
Well, I'm excited. I know that it will be published because I've been lucky enough to have an inside view of your work and your workshops and your classes that I was in a class that you taught on sex and sexuality in, I think I might have been in California with you. You were with Orly, I believe, from Israel.
Orly and Liliana, yes.
Yes. And it was just amazing. And I remember distinctly you putting the fun in sex in that room, and how open everybody in the class, all these therapists who were awkward talking about sex, could finally be, yeah, me too. Yeah, I've had that experience. So I'm sure that the book is going to have that same impact. So I'm so excited for it to come out. A basic premise that you and I share as Imago therapist is that couples are either in connection or in disconnection. Correct? Fair?
Yeah.
Fair. And what is the most common difficulty that couples that you work with describe as far as what keeps them disconnected in the bedroom?
Well, I think the most frequent is not just the different levels of desire that couples have, or the different things that turn them on, their differences around sexuality, but the stories that they then tell themselves about those differences, that they then believe to be the truth, and then react as if they were the truth. So, you don't care about me, you don't desire me, you don't want me, or you all you ever think about is sex. You don't really see me as a human being. I'm just an object for you. You're not interested in my experience. All of those stories we tell ourselves, which stay a bit rigid and fixed, I think, because it's such a difficult topic to talk about for so many couples. We just don't learn how to talk about sex in safe and effective and connecting ways. So,
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's really important. The part you're really highlighting for our listeners is the part about the stories that we tell ourselves, so that we get these beliefs, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but these beliefs then about ourselves or our partner, then we get kind of fixed on those truths, whether or not they're true or not. And then we create that stuckness, would you say, and then stay in it.
Yeah. And defend ourselves against the pain of those stories, because those stories are often painful stories.
Yeah.
I don't know why when we make up stories about our partner, we don't make up nice ones. You're going to live within a story, make it a nice one you want to live within.
But we're about ourselves.
Horrible stories, that, I'm not desirable anymore. I put on too much weight. My penis isn't big enough. I mean, whatever stories we tell ourselves, we just live within those, and then defend ourselves against the pain that those stories inflict on us. And we don't really get to know who we are, who our partner is, and how we can connect differently across those differences. Because that's where the challenge is, the energy is, and the friction is that makes sex exciting.
Yeah.
If it's too safe, it's kind of dull and boring, and so.
Do you ever work with couples that have really hot sex, and then they really just otherwise have really disconnected relationships?
It does happen, yeah. It
Mhm.
does seem to happen where couples can have a great sexual relationship. How connecting it is,
Uh,
emotionally, spiritually, on kind of all levels, I don't
yeah,
know. I wouldn't like
yeah,
to say. It's not my own experience.
yeah.
So, but I do hear that occasionally, that they have great sex, but the, the rest of the relationship is pretty
Yeah,
horrible, and they
yeah,
fight. Sometimes they fight and have great make-up sex, and
yes.
it is their way of connecting with each other. That's the only way they have, it seems, of feeling connected in a relationship where they can't kind of talk about things, don't feel safe to reveal themselves in other ways. So, yeah. And it works
That's,
the other way around, where people have a really lovely relationship, but there's no sex.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think improving your relationship doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a better sexual relationship. Sometimes it needs some separate attention, although it does help, context within which you can then be more vulnerable and be more open and share those parts of yourself too.
Yeah, you're bringing up that key word here, that vulnerability. That seems to be such a key piece to be able to talk about this hard subject, especially when you're talking about all the pain that's attached to our stories around the sex. Can I be vulnerable with you and tell you my fears, like I don't like the way I look, or I have gained weight since the baby, all those really painful places.
Yeah, I actually think once people start talking about that, it's easier sometimes to talk about the pain
Mm, hmm.
rather than um, their erotic turn-ons, their fantasies, their um, their sexual memories, the things that really juice them up. So I think sometimes that's even more vulnerable to talk about for some couples.
Yeah.
And so they focus on the pain and
Mm.
are trying to get their partner to change through convincing their partner how miserable they are.
Well, I mean, and is that kind of what you were sharing about you and David earlier in our conversation about that dialoguing about what hurt or what was bad or what wasn't working was not really the magic that changed your relationship?
No, it certainly wasn't. Maybe I'm generalizing too much to other couples from my own experience, but I think it's true for many couples that we just don't learn how to talk effectively about sexuality, our longings, our hopes, our desires, who we are. I
Mm,
mean, I think it's really a journey of self-discovery, which is
yeah.
so exciting to
It,
discover, yourself as a sexual being and expand the boundaries of who you thought you were and could be, and
yeah.
then share that with a partner. I mean, that's where the risky edginess, I think, really comes in.
Yeah.
That that makes the sexual relationship so vibrant and alive and juicy and fun. It's taking those risks to be more and more fully who you are.
I think what you bring up too is really interesting about the sexual discovery that, during those adolescent years, like the messages that you received and how you had your own sexual exploration and was that positive, all those things that happen so early on in those early experiences, how they shape who we are in our relationships at present. How do you have couples explore that, or even just when you said individuals? I think you were talking about self-discovery, like to thine own self be true. Like without that self insight, it is pretty hard to ask for what you need, or what you want. So, how do you manage that with your couples? What's your strategy?
Well, um, I mean, with my couples, I kind of work where they're at and help them to get just beyond where they're at.
Uh huh.
But I think, in my own relationship with David, I think, you know, shifting the focus to the positives. What I love about him as my lover,
Mm.
you know, lots and lots of sexual appreciation dialogues,
Mm.
and focusing on what has been wonderful, erotic memories that have been, you know, really juicy, that when I think about them, I get turned on again immediately, you know, the time he did it in the fields, you know, and let's go by on his motorbike, and, you know, there was all those little experiences we've had sexually over the years. Talking about those, sharing those, our memories, and then gradually moving into, well, what are the fantasies? And
Mm.
having created enough safety that people don't go to the, how could you possibly, you know,
Yeah.
that's, you know, because that disgust, that criticism, any shaming. I mean, there's absolutely no room in the bedroom for any kind of shaming or put downs or criticism or expressions of disgust. I mean, that will just kill a sexual relationship.
I think we can't highlight that enough, right? That there's no room for shame in the bedroom. You know, when we think about performance or physical, you know, um, attributes, any of those things will kill any hope, right, of that sexual desire. But I love what you said about going back and remembering like those times when sex was hot and helping us reconnect with that part of ourselves and our partner, and then maybe traveling into and what haven't we explored, and what might be possible for us. Can we look at our desires and fantasies? I love that. I'm thinking about some of your sentence stems that you use in your work. Would it be okay if I read a couple?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. What I love or value or adore you as my lover is, and I adore that because my feelings slash body experience or sensations that you arouse in me are, and then my impulses to, and then of course we talk about our mirroring and validation, and we haven't introduced that to our guest yet, but the idea of the sentence stem helping yourself and helping your partner explore some of these beautiful leads that you've created to help couples sort of just appreciate one another and again stay on that positive track. I love that.
I think it really does retrain the brain. You know, the more we focus on the positives, because our brains seem to be, some of us, our brains seem to be pulled towards what we don't like. So to make the choice to focus on what we do, what
Mhm.
we appreciate, and it just kind of then builds its own momentum.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
seems to me to be much more productive. And then we create the context within which we can show up and make requests and our partner know something else we might like as well, or something we'd like to try, and would they be willing? And, you know, it creates a whole different environment.
yeah. And what you're describing, and I know you describing your work so much, is creating so much safety um, for that context to happen.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that is your what you're saying about having the positivity, the no shame, no blame, no criticism, contempt, all of that feels really important to create that environment.
And I think it's always creating the safety to risk.
Mm.
Safety to stay the same. Safety that, oh, if I, you know, I'm okay with just the way I am and I'm not gonna, you know,
Ah,
you won't criticize me for being this way. I think that's, you know, that's a good base. But I think the safety to risk, to take risks, to be more than who we are, to go beyond old ways of being, old adaptations, old messages of how we're supposed to be, into,
ah.
and, you know, and then sharing that with a partner. That's the riskiness. That's that edgy bit that.
I love how you're differentiating that for me because I think that the whole idea of safety, you know, as a necessary basis is so important. But what you're also saying is staying the same, creating that safety doesn't really create any movement, and it's the risk exploration and the curiosity that kind of creates the juice that we're talking about, to have that kind of excitement and that initial excitement that you have in the very beginning when you've never been touched by that person. That every touch feels like electricity, and
Yes.
it's powerful.
Yeah. It brings in the possibility of novelty, the unknown, the unexpected, just, that aliveness, that excitement.
Yeah.
That makes our sexual relationship so vibrant and so deeply connecting, because we're risking showing up more and more authentically, I think, and going beyond the old strictures, the old constraints that we've put on in our life. There's one person, with whom we're vulnerable.
And there's that quote about everything we've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. And yet, boy, those risks can feel really scary. As much as we want them, who is it? Maya says, most people would rather live in a predictable hell than have a taste of heaven, and what you're talking about is that heaven.
Yeah, the heaven. We don't have a clue what the possibilities are for that, so play, I think, playing around the possibilities of heaven.
Yeah, play around the possibilities.
I focus a lot on long-term committed couple relationships, because that's my experience. That's what I know about.
Yeah.
Couples come to me usually who've been in a committed relationship for a long time. They may be on the brink of separation, so that's where I focus. But I realize that there's a whole range of sexual experience outside of that.
Yeah. I mean, what you address though too is like the idea of why people have affairs. I mean, can you talk a little bit about what the affair is within committed couples? Can you talk a little bit about how this could be almost your insurance policy for that not to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no such thing as an affair. Everybody's experience of affairs is different, from a one-night stand to a 10-year relationship to, and I think, the way I look at affairs is through the lens of the developmental stages. It can be an adaptation to challenges around connecting. It can be exploration related. It can be identity related, wanting to explore different parts of the self and be seen differently. Or it can be about competence and competition even. So I think, there are lots of ways of looking at affairs. But I think one of the things, for me anyway, about affairs, what strikes me is in a way it's the forbidden. And I think, doing something you're not supposed to do can add an edge of excitement and riskiness. The challenge for me in my relationship with David was when we got into really committed relationship. We had a long time where we were in romantic love for various reasons. But then when we committed to each other and we had a child together and a house together and a mortgage together, sex shifted from something that was kind of not supposed to be. We weren't, it was a bit naughty.
Yeah.
To an obligation.
Yeah.
You got to have sex. All those old messages, but men need sex, so you got to show up and have sex, and you do it for them, and think of Queen and Country, and
think of Queen and Country. Wow.
British Coco.
That is so heavy.
We get messages from the culture about it, and sex is an obligation in marriage, So I lost all of that excitement and edginess. So finding other ways to get that back through risking, I think was important for me. So I think affairs can be many things to many people. But I think they're often about this relationship in the sense of what are we not showing up, letting our partner know that we need,
Yeah.
that we're going to find somewhere else. Sometimes, I won't say always. And what was it we didn't get in childhood that we needed?
Mm,
And how did we adapt to that? You know, some of us went to the neighbors to get our needs met. Some of us learned not to speak up. Some of us, I mean, there are lots of reasons why people have affairs, I think.
Sure.
Not a simple thing, but I think therapy can help couples to explore the complexity of that so that they can move past it. And I love when I work with couples where there's been an affair, when they get to the point where they say, I'm, you know, I'm not glad about how this happened, but I'm glad we had a crisis in our relationship that broke things wide open because we've got a much better relationship now than we had before. You know, we're more in connection, we're more open with each other, we know each other better. So that's the place I always hope the couples will get to.
Well, I love what you just said, and that sounds like another episode that we absolutely could explore is like the idea of the crisis, whatever that crisis is that can wake us up. And I think that's really what your book is about so much is this idea that we get to wake up and start to enjoy all aspects of ourselves, in particular sex, and developing more satisfying sex. And this is it's a big, do we have to have the crisis in order to wake up? You know, it'd be nice not to have the crisis. So
Yeah.
I loved what you're talking about with this risky. I love the playful, risky theme that you're talking about for our blueprint for this creation of something new in our committed relationships. We have to be really intentional about it. And we talked about this some, but you know, in my practice, I see like a common theme of differences in sexual desire, and almost often, not always, but women saying, I just don't really need sex or don't want sex, or it's too much work, or it feels like a job. And a man either just feeling consistently angry because he's not feeling wanted or needed. And then there you go back, really kind of what you were talking about with you and David is this power struggle that is so hard for them to break out of. If a couple is in that place, whether it's the man or the woman that has a higher desire, what is the first thing that they need to do to sort of look at that pattern?
What's the first thing they need to do? I'm not sure how to answer that, but Pat Love's work was
Oh,
very, very helpful to me in this area. Now, a lot of, you know, we all have a baseline level of libido that we
mm-hmm,
come into the world with, and that is fairly consistent across the lifespan. So some people have a much higher level of libido, testosterone, and the sex hormones, and other people have a lower. And you know, we tend to be attracted to people who carry parts that are missing for us. So
right, right.
higher libido with a lower libido. And you know, during romantic love, they get real close.
Mm,
The lower libido person, you know, their erotic charge increases with all the chemicals that gets released into our systems in romantic love. The phenylethylamines and all of that other stuff gives us a boost in our sexuality. So we're much closer then. And then when we get into committed relationship, the person with the lower desire level, you know, starts to move back down to baseline.
mm-hmm,
And then it creates
mm-hmm.
this gap in the relationship. Well, the person with the higher libido suddenly feels abandoned or
Yeah.
duped or whatever. They feel frustrated, annoyed, angry, which is also associated with testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
So their, you know, their anger and frustration levels increase.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, being with a partner who's angry and frustrated and sexually annoyed, you know, isn't a big turn on for many people. So,
Right.
so the person with the lower level, their levels decrease even more.
Right.
And then, that's even more frustrating. And so it
Yes.
escalates. The couples come into therapy often when there's the gap has become huge, and they're putting their stories in, they're interpreting what's going on in very negative ways. So I think the first thing may be to have some kind of an understanding of how normal it is for this to happen, that we do have normal baseline levels. There's no right way to be. It's just the way we are. We're wired like our energy levels. Some people have much higher energy and others lower energy, or blue eyes versus brown eyes, I mean, just it's differences.
I really love that, Sophie, because it really goes back to the idea that we're attracted to someone who is obviously going to have like the positive and negative attributes and of our caregivers and other important figures in our lives, but that also that these lost parts of ourselves, so that one person in the relationship will have a high libido and perhaps I have a lower libido, but in that initial connection, my libido goes up and they meet me and we have this great connection and sex. But that children, marriage, bills, house, that everybody will kind of return to their original states. But what you're saying is to know how normal that is and that our differences are really, opportunities for us to grow and do what you talked about, which is let's sort of get curious about the risky. Let's remember who we were when it was hot and even go further than that and explore really what's possible for us. So I think that normal part is kind of a key first step. I really appreciate you sharing that with our listeners because I think we all want to be normal. We all ask how much sex is normal? Is once a week the thing? Is it if I haven't had sex in a year, am I, whatever that is, right? Those questions. And that goes back to your stories. So there's some issues around body image in our culture that seems to be getting in the way of a lot of people having satisfying sex. What are your insights, if any, that you can share with us about that?
I think it's very sad, the messages we get about sex, and about our bodies. And I think the relationship is where the healing potential lies. I mean, as a therapist, I'm a firm believer in that healing comes within committed relationship. So I think once again that the appreciation of each other and letting each other know what we want to have appreciated about and yeah, so in the book and in the workshop that we do, there's a partner appreciation dialogue, but there's also a self-appreciation dialogue. So what do I love about myself as a lover, as a sexual being in the world? So so I think that's important. And I think the way it's different from affirmations, self-affirmations, which I think are fine but don't go far enough.
Yeah.
Wounded in relationship. So when we're mirrored by a partner, as we explore and express our love, appreciation, all the positive feelings that we have about our ourselves and our own bodies and our own sexuality, we have that mirrored, we have it validated, we have it empathized with. I think that's where the deep levels of healing come from. So,
and no, what you're saying is so important. And for our listeners, they may not know what mirroring is, but mirroring means really like reflecting back what you've heard your partner say in a meaningful, connected way. And because we're truly listening to their experience. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about, my own stories about my own body image, and how when I've expressed those insecurities to my partner, Kevin, how he's not seeing it that way. How interesting it is, like, oh, I'm so old and look at this, creepy skin or something. He's like, where? Like, what are you talking about? But it's been that way over the 25 years of our relationship. Like, I had those thoughts at 35, you know, or even 18. Because we go back more than 45 years now. But it's so interesting how each of us have expressed our insecurities, and the other person's like, yeah, that doesn't bother me. But being able to talk to them in that more meaningful way you're describing could really be affirmative. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we make up that we have to be perfect to be lovable, and to really discover that we are oh so lovable.
Yeah.
That there is someone on this planet who really, really loves us, desires us just the way we are. All of that through doing the work. I think, that's not what comes naturally for many of it. What comes naturally is to pick on the things we don't like sometimes, which are just indications of where our needs are not getting met. But, to really go on this journey together and find out that there is another human being who finds you truly deeply lovable and loves you. Oh, I mean, that to me is what healing is about. To know you're loved. I mean, that then you don't have to put all your energy into your defense budget. And, and then you've got the energy free to just enjoy life and play and have fun and, do the work that's meaningful to you, or whatever, however else you want to spend your life. But
I love that when you talk about our energy, because I do think that, in the podcast, my basic premise is that at the heart of every relationship, every problem is a relationship that is struggling, whether that relationship be with your partner, a friend, your mother, your sister, or a relationship with food, a relationship with alcohol, a relationship with money, because this is the lens of relationship, right? And so I feel like what you're saying is so important, because without resolving some of these like different challenges that we all face as part of being human, we can't put our energies into these things like writing books, and helping others find whatever it is that they're doing, whether you're creating a new way to resource energy out in the oil fields. I don't know, but whatever your talent is, you really can't access that if all of your energy is looking at the problems of your relationships. And so I love that you're talking about being able to release some of that energy where it really could be a lot of fun.
well, the metaphor I use, Coco, is that the problems, where there are problems, is like a metal detector. You know, so you're walking along the beach and the metal detector starts to make a nasty noise.
Yes.
But the point of a metal detector is not to stand there and just, hear the nasty noise. It's saying, dig here. There's something of potential value here. So wherever the problem, there's also something of potential value, something to understand differently, something that needs to be released so that there are new possibilities for it. So we use our Imago tools to dig down, but the metal detector just signals where to dig. So the problems are just signposts to some place where there is something of tremendous value, tremendous potential underneath.
So what I should do then when I experience pain is think of that as my metal detector.
Yeah.
Letting me know I need to dig. I need to find out beneath this is something else that I need to kind of explore so that I can find more satisfaction. Is that fair? Yeah. So really
underneath, what can I do differently? Where does this come from? All of those questions.
So instead of using my metal detector, oh, I feel the pain, I'm going to keep walking. I don't, beep, beep, beep. But and stay there, stay with it, and get
Stay with it.
curious about what's under there. I really love that, Sophie. I really love that visual because I think we all know when that happens, and then we have all these defenses to protect ourselves when that metal detector goes off. Like, ooh, don't want to hurt that, don't want to feel that again.
Mm,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah, wow, I love that.
Dig.
Dig anyway.
Yeah.
You have a really funny, I don't know if it's a meme, but it says, let me find it here. I definitely wrote it down because I thought, oh, it says, most couples wait until after marriage before abstaining from sex.
That's a cartoon that
It's
I
a
found
cartoon.
somebody sent to me. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny and yet
Sad.
sad. So sad. And how many, young couples, thinking of a few that I'm working with right now, are not having sex and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that young couples today are having less sex and less satisfying sex than, their parents' generation
Yes.
and their grandparents' generation. And I think that's tragic in a world where sex is much more out there, talked about. Maybe that's the problem. We've, bombarded them with so much sex that it's lost that kind of naughtiness, edginess, fun aspect of, that it's something you're not supposed to be doing, Um,
Hmm.
maybe there's too much about sex in the culture. I don't know. I mean, I see it as a positive that there are so many movies that have positive imagery of sex. Maybe it leaves couples feeling disappointed that their own sexual relationship isn't, as hot as they see it on the movie screen. I don't know what's going on, but I think it's sad that young couples aren't having the sexual relationships. Maybe they don't want them,
I really doubt that they don't want them. My experience is that they do, but there's like also this comparison, as you're saying, social media seems to be playing a big part of imagining that everybody else is having way better sex, and because so and so's airbrushed, they have to be having better sex, and because I'm not this perfect being, then that whole comparison game going, but more than body image, just really a whole misinformation on stories.
yeah. And
Yeah.
porn. I think porn has a very valuable place in sexual relationships, but I think it also can give people a very false sense of what sex within an intimate relationship can look like.
Yeah.
So
I think porn's a whole nother really interesting topic in marriage. I have a couple who the man is he's very visual and was paying for porn, and could not really see that that was for her a betrayal of the relationship, and created a lot of triggering, like that detector, that metal detector was for her. I mean,
yeah.
truly, truly painful.
Well, again, I think it's about the stories we make up.
Mm.
When so many people see their partner watching porn as equivalent to an infidelity, which for the
Hmm.
person watching the porn, it isn't. Often.
Hmm.
Um, it's many things for many people, but it often isn't what the partner makes it up to be for that person. And so bridging the gap of how porn can be used, ethically produced porn. I mean,
Sure.
talking here ethically produced porn, I think, how that can be used to enhance a sexual relationship
Yeah.
if that's something that both partners can get their head around and enjoy and use as a form of arousal.
Yeah. As long as it's not replacing um, their sexual relationship,
Yeah,
right?
as long as it's
Yeah.
not replacing, it can enhance. I mean, the whole of
Hmm.
my focus is about enhancing. a
Yes.
sexual relationship
Yeah.
rather than replacing with other things, whether that's work or porn or friends or the kids or whatever people, cram their lives full of so they don't have to get down and dirty,
Yeah. Scroll through your phones, not have sex. All of it is, it's
Yeah.
really a challenge. I mean, there's so many things when you were talking about young people not having sex, so many distractions that I feel like exist in this culture that I know that I did not have as a distraction as a young couple. Um, I want to just talk I don't want to take up too much more of your valuable time, but I I want to talk a little bit more about mature couples in mature as I'm using that term with delicate intention. Mature couples struggling with really physical problems that keep them from being physically having sex. And what do you recommend about for couples who are physically challenged? Say it's ED, vaginal dryness, all the things that can really be difficult that they've addressed medically, but are still having difficulty with. What do you tell them about intimacy? How do you help those couples?
Well, as you say, if they've checked out the medical, because there are lots
Mm-hmm.
of ways
Mm-hmm.
for women to be more lubricated and to cope, because the walls of the vagina do dry up as
Mm-hmm.
you get older, and the walls of the penis too. I mean, the skin gets thinner, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there are challenges, and the medications that we take and so on don't do much sometimes for our libido. So, but I think, the idea of sex isn't just in out, in out, in out till you come,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Right. Right.
There's a whole incredibly wide range of lovely physical experiences that we can have, ways of touching each other, ways of talking to each other, of sharing erotic fantasies. Men don't need a full erection to have an orgasm. Uh, there are women don't need to be penetrated to have an orgasm. In fact, for many women, that's not how they reach orgasm. So there are lots and lots of ways in which couples can pleasure each other physically. And I think part of the aging process is letting go of the goal.
I love that.
Letting
Yeah.
go of the goal of orgasm. We got to have an orgasm. Otherwise, we haven't really had sex or it hasn't been successful.
Yeah.
And just enjoying the whole experience of being connected with each other in an erotic, physical, sensual way. Actually, aging can broaden one's concept of
Mm.
pleasure of sexuality and intimacy and erotica and so on. So, I think if we can embrace the journey and the changes that do go on in our bodies, um, you know, life goes on.
Life does go on. And I love that. So in really like letting go of the goal. And maybe that's just not for the mature. Maybe these young parents and there's so much pressure about performance in general in life, and what you're talking about is fun and risk and curiosity and discovery and all of that being more of a blueprint than um, maybe our old thoughts and feelings that we need to re-examine. I'm wondering if there's anything that you haven't shared with us today that you'd like to share about your work.
Well, in terms of what you're saying there, Coco, I think sometimes, the most erotic experience and all we have time for, or all that we're willing to show up for in a particular moment, is a passionate kiss.
Mm,
So, or just a little bit of touching and fondling. Maybe that's it. So the more we broaden the range of possibilities, it doesn't have to all lead, if you kiss me passionately and I respond, we're going to have to go all the way and have sex. But just,
Mhm.
sometimes a kiss is enough. Well, even if it isn't, well, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever, when we've got more time, and, just snatching it when the kids aren't in the room or just
Yeah.
putting that little edge to it. So I think expanding the definition of erotic connectedness within the relationship and finding moments and the willingness to engage. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important willingness is, but the willingness comes from being able to talk about it and
Mm.
to be respected, consent, what am I consenting to?
Mm.
All of that. I'm not consenting to the full Monty right now. I'm consenting to a passionate kiss. I've got the dinner to get, and I've got but
Yeah.
take a minute or two to really have a lovely juicy kiss. Well,
Mm.
that too is sex.
Mhm.
So yeah, so expanding the definition, learning how to talk about sex in ways that are more erotically arousing, and fun and
Mm.
playful.
Mm.
I think those kinds of things, and then working on the relationship as a whole,
Yeah.
so that you're in a good relationship.
Yeah. So there's this idea, though, you've said so many pearls today, for our listeners about this blueprint that we can work on to have more satisfying sex. But one of them is letting go of the goal, the willingness to explore and to broaden our perspective on what is intimacy, and really kind of open that model up. I love what you said about a sexy, juicy kiss, and that it doesn't have to lead to the event. But that I think many times, especially I remember as a young wife, feeling like I couldn't do that because I didn't have time, but I never did use the consent word. Like, I don't want to, dinner's on the stove, but I do want to give you this, because I do want you. I mean, I think that kind of languaging could really be helpful to couples who are just squeezing time in. They can barely get their job done and their kids fed and the bills paid and they're exhausted. So I really love that. I think that's a really great pearl for those that are really busy but still want to do something immediate to kind of change that dynamic of their sex life, and they're creating more intimacy.
It's important for both partners to be willing to stretch towards that.
Mm.
For the one who's, kind of busy and doesn't want to have sex, to be willing to open up to that and say, I'd love to have a really juicy, passionate kiss with you right now, and I'm not available for more than that right now. And for the one who wants it to go all the way every time, desperate for
Yeah.
it to,
Yeah.
lead down that
For the
path.
goal. For the goal.
Yes, the whole shebang. For them to be willing to back off, and
Yeah.
so it's the coming forward and the backing off, so that they can meet in the middle and can have more experiences and more openness to a range of experiences.
Mm.
It's a both and. It takes both partners being willing to stretch, because if the one who's less willing shows up for that juicy kiss, and the other one thinks, yippee, this is it, and pushes it too far each time, then the other will back off again, and you're back in the old dance.
Yeah, the old dance, which is really what we're trying to interrupt, is the old dance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a new dance.
and create a new dance. Ah, I love that. And I also want to just remind people what you said about that metal detector. If there's an issue going on, just use that beep, 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 beep. first we look within and then we explore with our partner, because there's something really important in there that we're meant to use to grow. Thank you, Sophie, for your wisdom and making this conversation fun and safe and certainly informative. When your book is released, I'm going to need to share this with our listeners. I wonder, do you have any workshops, anything coming up that I can put on my website, which is hiltonheadimago.com? Is there anything that I can put up so that people can find out more about your work, therapists that want to study with you, couples that want to work with you or attend one of your workshops?
Well, my website is sophieslade.com.
Okay.
My email address is slade, SLADE.imago, IMAGO, at iCloud.com. My next workshop, Satisfying Sex for Committed Couples, will be in New Zealand. So if anybody wants to come to New Zealand in November, I think, then I'll be doing it there. I'm doing a sexuality, sensuality, and imago training in Turkey, well, online for the people in Turkey. So anybody who speaks Turkish or English, because I'll be giving it in English, that will be in September. So yeah, there'll be some things coming up. So
well, I can't wait to then when we edit this episode and get it out there, we can maybe share it with Peter in New Zealand so that he can promote your November, and then also what you're doing in Turkey, and that is in
September.
All right.
Colleen and I will probably be doing the Imago, the sexuality, sensuality, and Imago training online early next year. So that'll be coming out. We haven't set dates yet, but hope to do that together.
So those of you who need more of Sophie Slade, I personally can't get enough. Our senior faculty from Imago International Worldwide, we are so grateful to have you, Sophie, and thank you again for being my very first episode. It means the world to me.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was your first episode.
Very first episode.
I feel so privileged to have been part of this, and thank you for inviting me.
It's so exciting. And have a wonderful day.